Okay. House is empty enough, it's echoing. Okay. Yes, we need this. I'll pause it.
Hold on, my child. Joy comes in the morning. Joy comes in the morning. Weeping only lasts for the night. Hold on, my child. Joy comes in the morning. Joy comes in the morning. The darkest hour.
Hopefully I won't get a copyright strike on that. Pretty sad. All right. This is Jerry Diamond with How to Get Out of Babylon. While I'm pulling up my stuff here, this was Meet the Neighbors Day, so I saw one family going down the road, and I'm like, all right, that's it. I jumped in the van, and I got dressed real quick and, put on a decent shirt. Jumped in the van and went over to their house, and they're the people that used to own the farm. So I met them, and then driving around, I met another couple just up the road, and then I met another family down at the other end of the road. So it was pretty cool. Pretty cool. All right, so where are we at here? I'm going to continue. This is on, I'll rename this because it's the title that I wrote it up as, and I think I might have put that in before, but we need more Puddleglums of Marshwiggles and Kings, of Shadowlands, and the healing of things, which is what we're going to be seeing happen. I know a lot of people don't, have second thoughts or reservations, or don't like Lord of the Rings and don't like C.S. Lewis, and oh well, I'm sorry, I do. I always have. I've said before that it's the worlds that they created, or the scenarios they created, were, to me, through my whole life, more real than the life I was living. I've lived more in my head. I was sitting there one day, and my daughter Susie was there, and I said, if I lost my mind, I would die, because that's all I have is my mind. I don't have much of anything else. I don't have much of a body, but I'm just saying, it just struck me that so much of my living, my being, is focused on, the future, the kingdom, the present, the kingdom being built. But it's like, what is there without that, I have always been looking for a city whose builder and maker is Yahweh. So, I don't know. I'm not really making apologies. I just understand that some people have reservations and may not want to listen, and that's fine. It's personal choices. But one thing is true. They're both. Yeah, they have some weird stuff, But in Tolkien did not like allegory. He supposedly gave C.S. Lewis a hard time about the Chronicles of Narnia. There was a group of people, the Inklings, G.K. Chesterfield, Williams, the guy that wrote, can't quite even remember. But anyway, he didn't like allegory, and yet the Lord of the Rings, this Stone Kingdom of Yahweh here, man, I mentioned, he goes, you realize that that's an allegory for the kingdom? And I'm like, yeah, I do, big time. everybody in there whose name begins with a G, Galadriel, Gandalf, are good people. And everything that begins with a B, Balrog, Boromir, they're bad people. And everything that begins with an S, Sauron, Saruman, Satan, bad peoples. So, anyway, but there's a lot of truth that's brought out in a storyline that is, to me, has always been encouraging. And I'll before I get back to the line of my text here, because I did some screenshots. I wanted to read them. And for example, one is that Gandalf was talking with Frodo, and Frodo's like, he says, it's pity Bilbo didn't kill him when he had the chance, speaking of Gollum, the little creature that had held the ring for so many years. And Gandalf says, pity? It was pity that stayed Bilbo's hand. Many that live deserve death, and some that died deserve life. Can you give it to them, Frodo? Do not be too eager to deal out death in judgment. Listen to that one a few times. You preppers and survivalists are going to shoot first and ask questions later. Do not be too eager to deal out death in judgment. Even the very wise cannot see all ends. My heart tells me that Gollum has some part to play yet, for good or ill, before this is over. The pity of Bilbo may rule the fate of many. Now, Tolkien knew what he was going to write into that story, but, like I said, many times I've seen things in stories that are a biblical principle fulfilled or broken. And I talked the other day about Shania Twain and how she fulfilled the role of the firstborn son, even though she had older brother and older sister, at least one of each. A young girl, the youngest sibling old enough to do anything about it, she fulfilled the role of the firstborn son. Did it hurt her financially? How many of her siblings own a 80-house mansion, 80-bedroom mansion on Lake Louise in Switzerland? Yeah, it didn't hurt her. So she was blessed. So, and then breaking rules. I asked the question, nobody's responded yet. In the last chapter I read, a biblical law was broken. And I'm just hinting that something bad may happen because of that. Does anybody point out what it is? All right. Old and New Testament both. It's not Torah, it's in Torah, but not just, it's reinforced in the New Testament. In the Gospels. There, I gave it away. All right. So, just to throw it out because, spoiler alert, like who hasn't read The Lord of the Rings? If you like it, you've read it. If you like it, you've seen the movie, so I'm not going to spoil alert for anybody. But what happened because Bilbo spared Gollum? Frodo is standing there in the crack of Mount Doom with the ring, and he can't, at that point, he can't let it go. And he puts it on, and he, of course, goes invisible. Gollum is there. Gollum jumps on his back and feels and finds the ring and bites his finger off and then falls in. So Gollum fulfilled his destiny, and he, affected the fate of many, for sure. Like everybody in the world, Had Frodo not done that, the ring would have gone back into the hands of Sauron, and the whole, existence would have been over. The bad guy would have won. The big S guy would have won. So, as it was, Frodo needed some help. So, all right. Now, at another point, Frodo's like, him and Gandalf, he says, I wish the ring had never come to me. I wish none of this had happened. So do all who live to see such times, but that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us. There are other forces at work in this world, Frodo, besides evil. Bilbo was meant to find the ring, in which case you also were meant to have it, and that is an encouraging thought. Of course, the thing that the hobbits had, over everybody else was they didn't have a lust for power. They didn't have a desire to rule. They were just these simple little gardener type folk. And that is where, let me tell you, the whole power of this story is Frodo would never have survived. Not possibly could he have possibly survived. I'm trying to, All right. He could not have survived without Sam. And who was Sam? He's always quoting the old gaffer. The gaffer was his father, a master gardener. Sam was just a gardener. That's all he was. And when Frodo realized that he had to go to Mordor and he's going to go alone, he got in the boat and he starts paddling out in the river. And Sam goes wading out and he goes, "Wait, Mr. Frodo, I'm coming with you." And Sam goes, go back. You can't swim, Sam. You can't swim. Yeah, "I'm going to Mordor alone." "Of course you are, Mr. Frodo, and I'm going with you." So he's not going to let him go. He said, "I made a promise to Gandalf, don't you leave his side." And I won't. So he would never leave his side. Yeah. I mean, of everything I've ever read in my entire life, nothing has meant more to me than that relationship. Frodo with this killing burden, sucking his life away, making him, getting closer and closer to being invisible. Not just when he put the ring on, but just, his whole psyche was fading. He was being drawn over to the spiritual, into the spiritual realm, and not in a good way. He's becoming stretched. He's becoming ethereal. So, but yeah, that's always been. There was one guy that I sent stuff to, email after email after email. The guy had been a international banker. He said, "I knew the laws and customs and taxes." He had to have, I think he said 130 nations, which doesn't even make sense. I don't know if there is that many, but he had to know everything: culture, mores, customs, food stuffs, everything. So it was a polymathic. He had to be, because he had to be able to have a mind that could control all that much information. Well, I sent him stuff and sent him stuff and sent him stuff and sent it up, and he read it all. He regurgitated it. He understood it. He fed it back to me. Came out and visited. I went and looked at I don't know how many properties with him. I sent him a list of properties, under 100,000. I thought, yeah, maybe, So I sent him a bunch that was over 100,000. They didn't look at any of the $100,000 properties. I looked at 150, 200, 300,000. His wife was a NICU nurse, neonatal intensive care. And then thanks to Joel Skousen's A Tactical Guide to Relocation in America. Oh, that's right. A strategic guide. Yeah. Anyway, thanks to that book and somebody that thought they knew they were doing somebody a favor, I thought they were making a lot of money. I don't know where they're at now. But anyway, one thing he said to me, he says, "Your handling of Tolkien and Lewis is masterful." Of course, some of it was mine, some of it wasn't. Like this thing is kind of a mishmash. And some of these lines in here, I'm like, I don't remember writing that, and I don't think I could write that now. But it's my stuff because I talk about something personal that happened in my life, so whatever. But anyway, okay, so here's a place where, and this is just flat out one of the, I've read a little bit of, a couple articles about this, but this situation here is one of the greatest speeches in all writing, anywhere, anytime, all centuries, They're in a little city called Osgiliath. It's being attacked by the enemy. Frodo has just barely escaped being captured by the giant flying pterodactyl-looking thing, the Nazgul riding him. And the only reason he didn't is because Sam came up and captured. Right as he put the ring on, Sam smacks him out of the way, and the thing takes off. But and then Frodo has the sword, and he's about ready. He's got the sword right at Sam's neck, and then he comes to his senses, and he drops the sword and he says, "I can't do this, Sam." And Sam says, "I know. It's all wrong. By rights, we shouldn't even be here, but we are. It's like in the great stories, Mr. Frodo, the ones that really mattered. Full of darkness and danger they were. And sometimes you didn't want to know the end, because how could the end be happy? How could the world go back to the way it was when so much bad happened? But in the end, it's only a passing thing, this shadow. Even darkness must pass. A new day will come, and when the sun shines, it will shine out the clearer. Those were the stories that stayed with you, that meant something, even if you were too small to understand why. But I think, Mr. Frodo, I do understand. I know now. Folk in those stories had lots of chances of turning back, only they didn't, because they were holding on to something. What are we holding on to, Sam? That there's some good in this world, Mr. Frodo, and it's worth fighting for. So, all right, go back to... All right, so back to my Puddleglum thing. Okay, and this picks up at now back to Puddleglum. It is hard, perhaps impossible to see from our perspective, but true and powerful nonetheless. The forces we see, mighty as they seem, evil as they are, inhuman as they have become, have no chance against the infinitely mightier forces and higher power they are arrayed against. And that is where blind faith comes in. This reminds me of C.S. Lewis's Puddleglum, the Marshwiggle, and the silver chair. The wicked sorceress, who is actually a snake, has turned herself into a beautiful and charming woman. After she has surreptitiously thrown down a stupefying magic powder into the fire, she strums on her mandolin. The brave band of the prince's rescuers, in order to rescue the prince, should attack her. But the music, the comfortable warmth of the room, and the sweet, heavy smell of the magic powder begin to put them to sleep or into a dazed, hypnotic state. Fortunately, one of the band, Puddleglum, has the presence of mind to stamp out the fire so that the magic power ceases to rule their wits. We need many Puddleglums, people who will stop the hypnotic effect the enemy has upon ourselves, our family, and our friends, even if it means being injured in the process. When he stomped, his feet were bare and he had webbed feet and used to walking, but he stomped right into the fire and burned his foot. So now he had pain added to the, effective waking up. In other words, we need someone we know and trust to convince us that we are being drugged, duped, hoodwinked, mesmerized, and are slowly, ever so slowly being boiled like a frog in a laboratory beaker. And in response to the witch's beguilement and media spin, Puddleglum's words are so insightful as to what should ever be our attitude and convictions. Now, the witch has told them that they were making up the world above. This is an underworld, and she says this is the real world. You know, that lamp, you just imagine that, and you've imagined this, son, you've made that up. And you've seen my cat, and so you've made up this, imagined a giant cat, and you call it Aslan, but that's not real. This cat is real. So suppose we have only dreamed or made up all of those things. Trees and grass and sun and moon and stars and Aslan himself. Suppose we have, then all I can say is that in that case, the made-up things seem a good deal more important than the real ones. I'm on Aslan's side, even if there isn't any Aslan to lead it. I'm going to live as like a Narnian as I can, even if there isn't any Narnia. So, he's a character that, wants to. And in another one, I pointed out that he's not concerned about the afterworld. Okay, if there isn't any Narnia, that's not my concern. My concern is the here and now. My concern is doing what I need to do to bring the king back to sit on the throne. And that should be our goal. Like I said, we should be seeking a city whose builder and maker is Yahweh. We should be doing something toward the building of the kingdom, taking care of our children, making sure they're safe, making sure they're instructed in the righteousness in the scriptures, and doing things to provide not only for our family, our loved ones, but many more people. So that's where we should be, devoting our effort and not worrying about what am I going to get out of it. What am I going to sit on the right hand or the left? Am I going to, the sons of Boanerges, well, who's the greatest? Who's going to be the greatest? I'm greater than you are. No, that's not it. Get the basin and the towel and kneel down and wash some feet there, buddy. So, I don't know. I'm tired a bit. Let me see here. Puddleglums is just quite the character. This is what a little bit goes into that a little bit. But, okay, we can still learn from Tolkien and from Lewis a vital spiritual truth. Death is a doorway through which we escape the limits of our physical world and enter into the eternity of heaven. Whatever the situation was in our pre-fallen state, on this side of Eden, we must first die if we're to be reborn, resurrected, and made new, a truth that Tolkien highlights in The Lord of the Rings by staging no less than 3 dramas of death and resurrection. Gandalf is reborn after his fight with the Balrog. He falls for 3 days. He dies for 3 days into the bowels of the earth. I'm like, that's pretty clear. He can say he doesn't believe in allegory, but Gandalf is falling into the earth. He's in the earth for 3 days before he, stops falling and gets out. Frodo is killed by Shelob the spider and then returns from his sleep of death. And then Aragorn treads the paths of the dead and returns alive and victorious. When held up against the vast canvas of Tolkien's epic, the Chronicles of Narnia can hardly hope to touch on so grand a theme as the nature and purpose of man's mortality. And yet Lewis does just that in his final chronicle, The Last Battle. Here in the darkest and most esoteric of the 7 novels, Lewis recounts the tribulation, destruction, and final judgment of Narnia and its inhabitants. It seems almost cruel that Lewis would force his readers to witness the death of the land that they have come to love so dearly. But he has a message to deliver, and it is one that he wants his readers, including and especially his young readers, to understand and accept. And that message is simply this: all worlds draw to an end, except Aslan's own country. Though Jill, who is brought to Narnia along with Eustace to help stem the tide of destruction, knows that our world will end, she harbors a secret hope that Narnia will never end and that it will go on forever and ever. The line quoted above is the answer that Jill receives when she shares her hope, an answer that is soon confirmed by a series of events that lead to the literal unmaking of Narnia by apocalyptic forces unleashed by Aslan. When all the stars are falling down into the sea and on the ground, that happens in Narnia. And guess what? It can happen on Earth because those stars are not big and they're not very far. So another, when you take that passage, stars falling, that was one that I always man, they're so huge, the Earth is like a little speck. Yeah, right. That's what they want you to believe. But it's not true. The Bible is true, and they're wrong. They're lying through their teeth. But it is not only the death of Narnia that we are forced to endure in the last battle. In the closing chapters of the novel, we learn that all but one of the Earth children whom we have come to know and love in the preceding 6 novels have died in a train wreck and have been transported to the dying Narnia in the final seconds of life. After first watching in awe and wonder as Aslan judges the talking beast and Narnia falls into darkness, and then witnessing with greater awe and wonder the glories of Aslan's country, the children, only 2 of whom have grown old since their adventures in Narnia, fully expect that Aslan will send them back to Earth as he had done so many times before. In the past, they had been eager, if somewhat sad, to return to England, but now all they wish to do is remain forever in Aslan's country. It is therefore with great joy that they receive Aslan's startling news. There was a real railway accident. Your father and mother and all of you are, as you used to call it in the Shadowlands, dead. The term is over. The holidays have begun. The dream is ended. This is the morning. This passage, when taken in conjunction with Lewis's breathtaking descriptions of the beauty and freedom of Aslan's country, captures and embodies with great force Tolkien's assertion that death is a good thing, a gift even, because it releases us from bondage to this world and opens forth to us a nobler and higher destiny. For now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face. 1 Corinthians 13:12. We have been convinced by the enemy, whether we call him Sauron, the White Witch, or Satan, that death is the shadow, when it is in fact our world that is the shadow. It is not death, but life that is the dream. On the other side waits not night, but morning. And it's just a beautiful song, the little snippet I played there by Dallas Holm. Joy comes in the morning. If you've knelt beside the rubble of an aching, broken heart, when the things you gave your life to fell apart, you're not the first to be acquainted with sorrow, grief, or pain, but the Master promised sunshine after the rain. Hold on, my child, joy comes in the morning. Weeping only lasts for the night. Hold on, my child, joy comes in the morning. The darkest hour means dawn is just in sight. To invest your seed of trust in God in mountains you can't move, you have risked your life on things you cannot prove, but to give the things you cannot keep for what you cannot lose is the way to find the joy God has for you. Hold on, my child, joy comes in the morning. Weeping only lasts for the night. Hold on, my child, joy comes in the morning. The darkest hour means dawn is just in sight. This was one of the lines that I could not believe was not in the movie. One of my favorites in all the books I've ever read. Aragorn says, "Yet dawn is ever the hope of men." And this is at the Helm's Deep, at the Hornburg. They're being attacked by the creepy, crawly orc, bizarre creatures created by Saruman. And the setting is that Gandalf had gone to get reinforcements, the Rohirrim, the riders of Rohan, and he said, "Look for me at dawn on the 5th day," figuring that's how long it would take him. Well, this is the 5th day about to dawn. And I don't know it doesn't say Aragorn remembered that or anything, but Aragorn says, "This night is as long as years. How long will the day tarry?" And Éomer says, "Dawn is not far off, but dawn will not help us, I fear." Aragorn says, "Yet dawn is ever the hope of men." Éomer says, "But these creatures of Isengard, these half-orcs and goblin men that the crafts of Saruman have bred, they will not quail at the sun. They will not give way now for dusk or dawn until Theoden is taken, or they themselves are slain." And Aragorn says, "Nevertheless, day will bring hope to me. Is it not said that no foe has ever taken the Hornburg if men defended it?" And Éomer says, "Aye, so the minstrels say." And Aragorn says, "So then let us defend it with hope." In other words, let us weary not in well-doing. Let us do what we can in the search for truth, in protecting the health of our families and loved ones. Oftentimes the truth, the help, the remedy is simple. It is so simple as to seem foolishness to the wisdom of the world. Do not let the opinion of the world, with all of its false wisdom, keep us from pursuing the real world, and the real world, simple though they may be, and the real truth, simple though they may be. So that's in the simplicity, the absolute, utter simplicity of what I see Father doing, using nothings, using nobodies, using the little things, as the one speech there where Gandalf said, "Why the halfling?" I don't know. Saruman thinks it's the great powers that keeps evil at bay, but that's not what I've found. I found it as the little things, the little acts of kindness, deeds of love. And so that's what we're looking at doing, and simple things can make this happen. The nothing things, salt, earthing. What's that? It's nothing. It's free. Stick your finger in the ground. Stand barefooted. Lay on the ground. You know, you're healed. Aircrete. What's aircrete? 2/3 air. What's air? Nothing. You know. I mean, if I took you and brought you in this room with there's nothing in it, and said, "What's in that room?" You go, "A light." And I mean, let's say there's nothing in it. No fixtures. No nothing. You know. What's in that room? Nothing. Well, it's full of air. It's full. You know. It's full of air. So anyway, nothing. Air is nothing. So it's fascinating to me. And I looked for 18 years, 17 years. You know, I had this vision, invisible house. I mean, a house that was underground house. It looked like a hobbit house, completely invisible. I knew it was invisible from above. For 17 years, I looked at every single alternative house in the world, wondering, you know, can this make what I saw? And the answer was no, 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 no. 17 years, no, 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 no. Get the message? You know, because I knew what I was given to know is that, you know, I mean, the house had been built ahead of time for whoever got there and whoever found it, and it was theirs. When the young couple and the 2 kids saw that, it was their house. And it just, you know, I go to prepare a place for you. What's happening right now? He's going to prepare a place for his bride, for his people. And I'm not saying this is the whole thing right here, but, you know, I'm not saying it ain't, you know. I don't know. It's up to him. You know, it's his program. It's his wedding feast. Where is that going to be? Don't know. But a friend of mine pointed out, Dwayne Hansen, he said, Jerry, do you have any idea how much of the Old Testament and New Testament point to one single solitary event? The wedding feast. Pretty stunning. Think about it. That's the denouement of history. That's the swan song, however you want to call it, the epitome, the great climax. That's it. A wedding feast. Get with the program. Man, if you're not looking to be holy and looking to do everything you can to attend that feast, then, you know, what are you doing? What are you doing that's worth anything? You know? Wow. Hey, that's a heavy thought, you know? So that is his plan. How he's going to do it, where he's going to do it, that's his prerogative. Like I've said before, you know, all the little differentiations of Bible prophecy, pre, post, blah, blah, pre-trib, post-trib, mid-trib, you know, premillennial, postmillennial, you know, amillennial, there is no millennium, you know, panmillennial, millennium is all everywhere. 800 different facets, 800 different little arguments that you can get in a fight over with 799 other people that don't agree with you. And 799 of them are wrong. Think about it. They can't all be right. I don't care how well you can defend what you think you believe, and you don't really believe it, or you'd be doing something about it. I don't care how well you can defend it. It doesn't make any difference. It's probably not going to happen. What are the chances of you being right, everybody else being wrong? Slim and none, and Slim left town. You know, don't be stupid. So, but I say this. It may be that all 800 are wrong, and that's what I believe is going to be the case. I really do. You know, you'd read the Bible, you'd read Genesis 49:10, and put in the meanings of the Hebrew words for the words there. You'll come up with a totally different viewpoint that nobody's figured out, and nobody's going to figure out. I mean, unless you just are open and understanding and honest with the Scripture, that ain't going to happen. So there are things that are in the works that are going to be stupendous, magnificent, awesome. And this sister I talked to last week, I mean, she studied prophecy. She's been on the other side, you know. I mean, she had a near-death experience and has seen some things. That's 2 in a week. It's getting a little Stone King of Yahweh. He was, Anyway, very interesting. I haven't met her yet, but I mean, I've talked to her. Personally talked to 2 people within a span of a week that have been on the other side. Very interesting. But anyway, she studied prophecy, Jeremiah, like I said. I don't know if I said it, because I blew a whole recording. I'm going to probably blow this one if I don't get off of here. So anyway, I better finish. Jeremiah and the Ark of the Covenant. And she knows from reading Maccabees that the Ark of the Covenant will be revealed in the last days. It's going to happen. But it will be only for the remnant. So if you're the remnant, listen up. Get it together and get here. All right, this is Jerry Diamond. If you're listening to this, you're the remnant.